Good morning. I am Jim Harvin, your lay leader for today, which promises to be a joyous day. I hope you have the opportunity to get outside and appreciate spring in full bloom. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks. We know you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you to our Zoom cyberspace. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. Here at UUFLB, we hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, inspiration, and love. We're so glad you joined us this morning and hope you will stay for a few minutes after service for fellowship and conversation. Our Touchstones themes for April is theological reflection. Because theology in our tradition is not prescribed, it is incumbent upon each of us to build our own theology. And by doing so, we create a more reliable internal compass that orients us to our true north. And by doing so, we're better able to align our actions with our values. Theological reflection is an essential process to identify first principles, clarify values, take seriously that which we do not believe, explore those ideas that make us uncomfortable and or challenge us, and ensure that our beliefs are life-enhancing. As Rilke said, sometimes it is necessary to live the questions, in order to experience the answer on some distant day. Theological reflection is a lifelong endeavor. Today we welcome back the Reverend Dr. Neal Jones. Reverend Dr. Neal Jones is a psychologist at the Pisgah Institute of Asheville. Born and raised in North Carolina, he earned his bachelor's from Wake Forest University, his master's of divinity from Southeastern Seminary, and his doctorate in psychology from Baylor University. And that's quite a career there. He has served as the minister of 5 congregations in North and South Carolina, Texas, and even here in PA. Most recently at the Mainline Unitarian Church. He also serves as the chair of the National Board of Trustees of Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Reverend Jones teaches and practices a spirituality of personal wholeness, relational respect, and social justice. And for today, his sermon is some thoughts on thoughts and prayers. It may surprise you to know that Reverend Jones, as a humanist minister, prays, but his prayers would probably not pass the test of traditionally religious people. He will share his conception of what prayer is and to him and what it accomplishes. Now let us enter into worship together. As always, we have Avi Wisnia, our musician extraordinaire, with us, and he will do the prelude.
Good morning, everyone. It is a joy for me to be able to welcome you into prayer every service with a little bit of music. Good morning, everyone. It is a joy for me to be able to welcome you into prayer every service with a little bit of music. Because for many, music itself is a form of praying. Music is a form of prayer. So we start this morning with a prayer by the Beatles. I really wanna know you. I really wanna know you. I really wanna know you, Lord, but it takes some time, my Lord. Ooh, my Lord, my sweet Lord, my Lord. Words are flying out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither wildly as they slip away across the universe. Pools of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my open mind, possessing and caressing me. Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Images of broken light which dance before me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. Thoughts meander like a restless wind inside a letterbox. They tumble blindly as they make their way across the universe. Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Sounds of laughter, shades of life are ringing through my open ears, inciting and inviting me. Limitless, undying love which shines around me like a million suns. They're shining on and on across the universe. Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 No, nothing's gonna change my world. Jai Guru Deva. Jai Guru Deva. Jai Guru Deva. Jai Guru Deva.
Thank you, Avi. Song is certainly a form of prayer. Now, we'll light the chalice, and if you would like, please join me in saying the following words. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope for those who have gathered here this day, for all who have ever walked through our doors, for those who may yet find this spiritual home, and for those whose paths will never come our way. For all this, and for all those things we dare to hope and dream, we kindle our chalice flame this day. Our opening words are from the Reverend Linda Hansen. Much of our human struggle is with what we do not know or understand. It is often difficult not to want answers, or even more difficult not to think we have them already. May we experience what we do not know not as an individual failure, but as an invitation to community. May we seek not the true answers so much as the true questions, knowing that true questions make of our lives meaningful, even if sometimes restless journeys. May we be grateful for the restless voices in our communities. May we be good company to one another in our questions and our journey. And now we'll have Beck Stow provide us our message for all ages.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Beck Stow, and our message for all ages today is The Invisible Web, a story celebrating love and universal connection by Patrice Karst, illustrated by Joanne Lou Weithroff. The very best news ever has begun to spread all over the world, one heart at a time. Shout it from the mountaintops. Every single one of us is connected to those we love by invisible strings. That means Giovanna and her daddy are always together, even though he moved to a new house. Omar can feel the tugs of love from his parents, even though he is living far away at school. Mr. Chang still feels Mrs. Chang close by, even though she died such a very long time ago. And you, at this very moment, may feel the string of someone close to you, even though they aren't there. You can't see it, but it's real. Our strings reach to everyone we know. They travel far and wide to families and friends, classmates and coaches, to bus drivers and babysitters, neighbors and pets, to aunts and uncles and grandparents and grandchildren and countless other people. And all of those people have hundreds of strings. Soaring high over rocky peaks and across the seven seas, deep into jungles and valleys, and widening through the busiest of cities. All these strings crisscross one another and create a nest that covers the planet, interlacing us together, cradling us forever. The invisible web. The web has no borders and wraps every continent. Within it live butterflies and flowers, starfish and seahorses, lions and ants, rivers and snowstorms, and all human beings. Giovanna, Omar, Mr. Chang, and of course, you and me too. Some say it even reaches to our ancestors and those we cherish in the beyond. One tug on a string sends love to every one of us, woven together in this divine tapestry. And that means just one good deed travels across the entire web. Everything is linked. But sometimes folks forget. When they can't feel their strings, they forget about our invisible web. And that's when strings get tangled up. Like when lonely Luisa isn't invited to sit with anyone at her school at lunchtime, or when sad Stefano wishes his friend Marcos wasn't so bossy when they played, or when Mrs. Patel struggles at work without help and she wants to quit. Even violence and war can erupt when too many of us forget the web. When strings are ignored, they can become weak and begin to unravel. But the more people who care for the web, the stronger it remains. The web feels like every parent since the beginning of time, holding and protecting each one of us in millions of gentle arms. What could be stronger than all those hands holding us close? So many supportive fingers can always find a way to untangle strings so that love can flow again. But it's up to every one of us to spread the word. Our time is right now. As we tell our family and friends, sisters will remind brothers, who will write to cousins, who will call their great-grandparents, who will just nod and smile as if they have always known. If we remember the web and tug at it often, nobody will ever feel left out. We will see others more clearly. The people of the world will look into each other's eyes. They will smile at one another. And when one of them cries, they will all want to help. And they do. Marcos apologizes to Stefano, who forgives his friend, and then they have even more fun playing. Someone helps Mrs. Patel at work and tells her what a great job she's doing. She remembers that she's important and feels happy. And Louisa feels warm and bubbly inside when a few of the kids in class ask her to join them under the banyan tree for lunch. She knows right then that the invisible web is real. After school, Louisa cries with joy as she strokes her cat, who purrs the news to the stars, and the stars whisper the secret to the clouds, who share it with the songbirds, who serenade the world with this exquisite melody of love at the start of each morning and all during the day. Until, as the invisible web glitters in the magic of twilight, the owls take over and hoot the news throughout the night. The web is alive. The time is right now. It breathes as we breathe, pulsating all over our earth, the single heartbeat of love and life. And do you know what that makes us all? One very big family.
Thanks, Bex. We are truly all connected. And now, Avi will provide us with a song that we've sung many times in the past. In fact, we sung it every Sunday, but at this point, we give it its due time.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me
And now we'll have the Reverend Dr. Neal Jones provide the reading for today.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Avi. And thank you, UUs of Lower Bucks, for having me back as your guest minister today. It feels like coming back home. Our reading is from Lao Tzu, who said a long time ago, "At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want." Let's reflect on these words with some moments of silence, which I will conclude with an amen. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Jones. So now we will have our offertory announcement. The war in Ukraine has many in danger, especially their children. Save the Children is an organization that is concerned for these children caught in the middle of armed conflict, forced from their homes in freezing temperatures, and exposed to injury, hunger, and cold. Our donations to Save the Children's Ukraine Crisis Relief Fund can help provide immediate aid. Please be part of this effort by contributing as generously as possible to help this important humanitarian effort. And now we welcome back Reverend Jones for his sermon.
Thank you. A few years ago, California Congressman Ted Lieu walked out of a session of the House of Representatives when a moment of silence was called for to offer thoughts and prayers to the families of the victims of the latest mass shooting. I can't remember which one because sadly they occur so frequently that I lose track of them. Said the congressman, quote, "I've been to too many moments of silence. Just in my short career in Congress, 3 of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history have occurred. I will not be silent. What we need is action. We need to pass gun safety legislation now to prevent the shootings from happening in the first place." Now, Congressman Lieu expressed the frustration of many of us. It has become an obscene American ritual. A lone white male shooter opens fire on a crowd of people, and Americans cry out for their representatives to do something. And we are met with shoulder shrugs, mumblings about there's nothing we can do about the mentally ill, and assurances that the people we elected to protect us are sending us their thoughts and prayers. This pious mantra has become an excuse for inaction. Politicians who recite these words have managed to make this once benign and comforting phrase sound almost profane. Pious platitudes are not enough. This is not what we hire our politicians to do. We elect them to fix problems, enact policies, and keep us safe. Their inaction leads to people being traumatized, maimed, disabled, and murdered. They act as if mass shootings are acts of God, about which we can do nothing. But these shootings are not natural disasters. They are caused by human beings, and they can be prevented by human beings. We know they are preventable because no other country tolerates this kind of madness. The United States is the only nation in the world that makes getting a gun easier than getting a driver's license, or prescription medication. Now, we UUs especially believe that prayer and action must be united. We affirm that service is our prayer. Throughout our Unitarian and Universalist histories, we have prayed and acted for abolition, women's suffrage, labor unions, public education, freedom of speech, the separation of church and state, opposition to war and the death penalty, civil rights, and equal rights for women, people with disabilities, and LGBTQ persons. Prayer is sometimes portrayed as withdrawal from life to find the divine apart from this world. But UUs have long believed that the opposite is true, that the holy lies at the very center of life, that the sacred is manifest in the secular, that the extraordinary is found in the ordinary. Now, an unfortunate consequence of the misuse of the phrase thoughts and prayers is that it implies that one can either pray or take action, but not both. Now, as I understand and practice prayer, prayer prepares the soil out of which action grows. Now, some of you may be surprised to learn that this humanist minister prays. And I can assure you that the way I pray today is vastly different from the way I was taught to pray as a child in the Southern Baptist Church. In fact, some more traditional believers would probably think that my way of praying is not prayer at all. Now, the way I was taught to pray was akin to sitting on Santa's lap, making your requests to God and hoping that he would see fit to grant your wishes. And if he did, that was fine and dandy. If he didn't, you had to trust that God had his reasons, which you should never question. Perhaps he was trying to teach you patience and perseverance. Perhaps he was testing your faith or strengthening your character. Perhaps he had some grand scheme that was beyond your mortal mind to comprehend. Whether your prayers are answered or not, the important thing was to keep having faith and to keep praying. All I can say is what St. Paul said. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, thought like a child, and reasoned like a child. But when I became an adult, I put away childish things. Now, I don't need to tell you, there are quite a few adults who still have retained this childlike approach to prayer, who still conceive of God as if he were Santa Claus, and their prayers as if they were their Christmas wish list. Their prayers are similar to these prayers of young children, and I love these. Dear God, please make my parents understand that if I don't eat salad, I'll do better at school. Or God, please forgive me for hiding my sister's doll, and please don't tell her where it is. Dear God, I hope my dog is with you in heaven, and I hope you'll take care of him. And sorry if he chews on your sandals. And God, thank you for my baby brother, but I was really hoping for a puppy. Now, these kinds of prayers are appropriate for children. But when adults pray this way, like for a parking place at the mall or for the Eagles to win, they represent an immature stage of spirituality. And frankly, I blame my fellow ministers and churches for perpetuating this kind of childlike faith. For some people, this is the only form of spirituality they have ever been exposed to. Therefore, it's all they know. Again, to quote St. Paul, They had been treated as if they were children, being fed milk, but not solid food. Now, as a college and seminary student, I came to the conclusion that prayer has no effect on external reality. In other words, prayer does not avert any danger, cure any disease, stop any natural disaster, or win any war. And it turns out that my suspicions have been verified empirically. Now, there have been various studies which have debunked the ability of prayer to change external reality. But the most definitive study was sponsored a few years ago, ironically, by the Templeton Foundation. Now, I say it's ironic because if the study were biased at all, it would be biased in favor of the efficacy of prayer, because the Templeton Foundation is notorious for funding conservative political and religious causes. In addition, the study was overseen by Dr. Herbert Benson, a cardiologist who has publicly stated that he believes in the efficacy of prayer for medical purposes. Now, I'll not elaborate on the details of this study involving 1,800 heart patients and costing $2.4 million, but I'll simply share the results. There was absolutely no difference in the recovery rates between those who had been prayed for and those who had not. Now, knowing nothing of this or any other study of prayer, but based purely on my own experience, I come to the same conclusion, that prayer does not change external reality. However, I did conclude that prayer can change our internal reality, and that then we might change external reality. As an adolescent and a young adult, prayer for me at that time was opening myself to God's presence and availing myself of God's perspective, strength, love, patience, and compassion, which would move my heart and move me to act differently in the world. Now, that was back when I believed in a God, and back before I encountered a group of fellow spiritual seekers called Unitarian Universalists in Waco, Texas, of all places. Now, how I lost my religion is the subject of a different sermon, but for now, let me simply say that I came to the conclusion that the Bible has it backwards. We are not created in God's image, but we create God in our image. I came to realize that wisdom, love, forbearance, justice, and compassion are not divine qualities. They are human qualities, which we project onto our images of God. In fact, I would say that our conceptions of God and our prayers to God say more about us than about some God. Now, though my spiritual transformation was a lifetime journey, and it still is, I came to this perspective primarily because I came into contact with humanists and Buddhists in that first UU congregation I joined. But now this was the real catalyst for change for me. It wasn't simply that I was encountering different ways of thinking, but I was given the freedom and encouragement and non-judgmental acceptance to ask my own questions, to have my own doubts, to come to my own conclusions, and to speak my own truth. At its best, Unitarian Universalism provides the space for you to grow. And you need room to grow, room to experiment with new ideas and approaches to life, to try them on for size and speak them out loud for others to hear and for you to hear. So I want to share with you briefly this morning my understanding and practice of prayer at this point in my spiritual journey, recognizing that my understanding and practice may very well change as I hopefully continue to grow. The image of prayer, which I currently find useful, is that of a tree. A tree has roots that grow deep into the ground and branches which reach high into the heavens. Both movements are essential to my conception and practice of prayer. The first movement is going down deep into our most sincere yearnings. Joseph Campbell said that every religion starts with the word help. Now, this is a word that our culture despises because our culture teaches us that we are self-sufficient, autonomous, separate, and isolated individuals. But every great religion teaches us that this is an illusion. The truth is that we are interdependent with each other and this planet, which our message to all ages emphasized so well this morning, and that we are fragile, mortal, and have needs and limitations, and that we are dependent on so many gifts bestowed upon us by life, which sustain our lives. This first stage of prayer is digging down to the roots of our deepest longings. And normally, this requires solitude and silence because the noise of life can distract us with superficial longings. We may think, for example, that what we want is a new car or a larger house. But when we take the time to get beneath these superficial cravings, we may discover that what we really long for is contentment and joy in our lives. Or we may feel lost and aimless and are willing to go in almost any direction if the salary or status is great enough. But if we make the effort to get beneath these cravings, we may find that what we really yearn for is home, a place where we feel a purpose and at peace. Or we may think that what we want is merely to escape from loneliness and are willing to tolerate almost any distraction or relationship, when what we really yearn for are meaningful connections with others that will allow us to be authentic and vulnerable. Or we may be caught up in our anxieties. But when we take the time to get beneath our worries, we may discover that what we really yearn for is safety and serenity. Or we may be trapped in vindictiveness. But when we take the time to sit with our anger, we may find that what we really feel is hurt, and that what we really want is healing and wholeness. Or we may be steeped in guilt or shame. But if we're willing to risk being uncomfortably present with our guilt or shame, we may discover that what we yearn for is forgiveness, perhaps even self-forgiveness and acceptance, perhaps even self-acceptance. The priest and poet John O'Donohue says that prayer is the longing for belonging. What we genuinely long for is connection with someone or something greater than our egos. But we have to dig down to know what the longing is. So this first stage of prayer is the growing of the tree roots deep into the soul. Once you're in touch with your deepest longing, then you can express your longing out into the world. The second stage of prayer is the stretching of the tree branches out into the sky. Now, whenever the subject of prayer comes up, the question is inevitably raised, who or what are you praying to? I'm reminded of the 3-year-old who misheard the Lord's Prayer and thought it says, "Our Father who does art in heaven, herald is his name." Well, there are many names for God, or for whatever you regard as ultimate reality. God, Jesus, Allah, Buddha, Mother Earth, the life force, the universe. Personally, I don't think the name we use is that important. In fact, I like the Jewish belief that the name of God cannot be uttered because the mystery of life defies words, categories, definitions, and doctrines. What is important is not the name, but the naming of your deepest, most sincere longing, and daring to put it out into the universe like branches reaching out into the heavens. Clarissa Estes, who wrote the book Women Who Run with Wolves, says, "You may be pushed down, you may be kept from rising, but no one can keep you from lifting your heart toward heaven." Prayer happens when something deep within us reaches out for what we yearn for. And when we reach for what we yearn for, we are more likely to get it. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not defining prayer as wishful thinking, but I do know from experience that I'm more likely to find what I'm looking for when I'm looking for it. I'm more likely to hear what I'm listening for. Mother Teresa said that all prayer begins with listening. Are you longing for love? You're more likely to hear it if you're listening for it. Are you yearning for connection? You're more likely to see it if you're looking for it. The outstretched branches of the tree also represent openness and receptivity. The second stage of prayer is being open to receiving your heart's deepest desire. And when you realize your heart's deepest desire, you will not remain the same. The transformation of your heart leads to the transformation of your actions, which will lead to a transformation of our world. Genuine prayer leads to genuine action. So when tragedy strikes, it's okay to offer thoughts and prayers, but provide your thoughts and prayers with your hands and feet. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Neal. And now is a time in our service when we recognize and lift up one another in love. Let us be fully present and listen with open hearts. If you wish to share something now, click on Reactions and then click Raise Hand, and we will help you to unmute. And for everyone's benefit, please be brief. Waiting to see if there's any.
Oh, Colleen.
All right, Colleen.
Here I am. Hi, everybody.
Hi,
I just
Colleen.
want to thank everyone for being so kind and thoughtful with their cards and wishes. My knee is coming around. I'm not, tap dancing just yet, but I do appreciate everybody's well wishes. Thank you.
Glad to hear you're doing okay, Colleen. Okay. All right. Well, whether or not you share today, for your joys, we in this community join you in celebration. And for any sorrows or concerns, may you feel our sympathy and compassion. So let's pause for just a moment of gratitude, silent meditation, and prayer. So let us hear Avi's closing song as we conclude this service.
Please join me in singing hymn number 100, I've Got Peace Like a River. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul.
Thank you, Avi. Hopefully that made your toes tap just a little bit. And now let us extinguish the chalice. Please read with me the following words. We extinguish this chalice flame, daring to carry forward the vision of this free faith, that freedom, reason, and justice will one day prevail in this nation and across the earth. Our service is concluded, but please stay for a few minutes of conversation and discussion. You can unmute yourself and use the chat function now. And to see everyone's faces, please put your Zoom into the gallery view.